Welcome to the First Things First podcast. And first things first, we need you to subscribe and leave comments, letting us know what you think of the show. We're listening. I'm Nick Wright, joined by two of my favorite people, Jenna Wolfe, Cris Carter. Now, let's get the show started.
Happy Friday. Welcome to First Things First. I'm Ebony K. Williams. That's Hall of Famer, Cris Carter. Nick Gottlieb over here, sorry. Thought you were Nick, right?
Filling in for Nick Wright.
Filling in for Nick Wright, I wanted to say, of course.
Filling in.
That's why.
You did. I didn't really recognize him.
And all week, we're finishing out this week with you guys both being co-hosts. It's been a great week. I really appreciate it. You know, it's all part of the family. We're all doing our thing at Fox.
This has been so much fun. Yes. So much fun. Thank you for having me.
Good. And because of my Vikings and also my high school team, the Middletown Middies was purple.
Cris Carter.
Ebony represents Purple Rain today.
Minnesota
right.
Vikings
Let's do this.
purple for CC.
Let's give the people what
We're going to start this morning with the Lakers. Now, after months of drama, right, exactly, involving Lonzo Ball's father, Magic Johnson says, well, he's got no regrets that he drafted the point guard second overall. Magic then went on to say, quote, things are going to work out for the Lakers and for Lonzo. As for Lonzo and his dad, well, he says, quote, I always just play and he always talks. It's been the same way. Cris Carter, can the Lakers still build their future around Lonzo Ball, given that so much drama is always going to be present as long as his dad's around?
As far as the future, that is a tremendous expectation. I know when Magic Johnson drafted him, he talked about and made reference to the jerseys and the rafters, to potentially Lonzo being one of those players, and tremendous expectations. Lonzo's very, very fortunate that he's at the Lakers at this time with Magic Johnson, because is there another better person as an executive, as an entrepreneur? Doug, you've been knowing Magic for years. If you were drafted by the Lakers as a big guard, Magic's trying to cut his teeth, you know, as running the basketball operation. So he's very, very fortunate. I believe Magic's going to be very patient with him. I also believe because Magic, and I know Magic and his background in dealing with a lot of different things, like he's not totally shocked by LeVar Ball. Like, he's seen situations. It's not the best situation, but I believe that Magic believes in the relationship he has with Lonzo. He believes in Lonzo's skill. I do believe it's gonna take some time. So when you're talking about making him the face of the franchise or building around him, Magic's already said he's going big game hunting. Yeah. When he says he's going big game hunting, that means he's going with his wallet and he's going with the future of the team, that being a 3 to 6 year window. So it's hard to say Lonzo will be part of the future with the Lakers, but you have to be careful because as a player and as an asset of the Lakers, how much are you worth if your family is always going to be a distraction? So in their evaluation of the player now, you really have to evaluate his family going forward, and I believe that can be problematic.
There's so much good stuff in what you said. Let's start with the evaluation of Lonzo this far in, okay? Yep. But he's a better kid than they possibly thought they could have gotten. There are no marks against him as a human being. Yes. On the other hand, the fact that he is still not willing to put his dad in place and say, Dad, be a dad, okay? And if you want big baller brand, but you cannot talk about my team because this is my team. And it will never be his team until he's able to put his dad in place. Now, Cris also pointed out what is obvious, and they're not being coy about. They're going to try and get superstars because they don't think they have a superstar in the building, right? If they did, they wouldn't be going out looking for more superstars.
They think they have a couple promising players in Ball and Ingram.
And in Kuzma, of course,
yes, yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Yes.
So you have three, and then Josh Hart. Like, that's the core that they want to build around. And frankly, Julius Randle has kind of saved himself from execution, if you will. Everyone thought he'd be playing elsewhere. He's bought into what they want to do. He probably hangs around at the end of this year. So now you're starting to kind of build a core. You go out and you get a couple of stars. So to answer your question, can they build around him? No. But can he be very effective? Can he be a star Laker point guard for years to come? Absolutely. He's got to change his shot. He's got to change his body. Remember, he's never played pick and roll basketball. He's never played real defense. And when he was healthy, he was starting to make strides into being a leader. But the thing that he's missing most is the thing that quarterbacks have, point guards got to have. You have to be a verbal leader. Yes, you got to lead by example. Yes, you got to be a hard worker. You got to know where everybody's. You have to be accountable. You have to be all these things. But you have to be the face of your team, the voice of your team. There is no place for a meek voice running an NBA franchise at point guard. And right right now he's been unwilling to step up, whether it's on the court or off the court, putting his dad in place.
Let me ask you both this, both having played at the professional level and being on just a million teams, high school, college, what other? I know that LeVar Ball is not the first loudmouth dad y'all have seen, right? Have either of you ever seen an experience where a very quality player was ultimately undermined in the maximum ability they could have gotten to because their father was such a liability?
Right. I think that we've seen a lot of instances. There's a lot of parking lot dads. There's a lot of mothers and dads that lead to the detriment. But most of the time, it revolves around the kid either doesn't have the love for the sport or the kid doesn't have the ability to be an elite player. And eventually, when you go through the sifter in life, it typically happens when the kid is between 8 to 12. That's the first sifter. Then between 12 and 16, you start to see people drop off in the sport. When you get to the elite level, there's still a sifter going on. So now is he going to be able to get through that? Is he going to be able to be a verbal leader? Is he going to change his shot? Because all these things, see, I still think they can build around him, but it's going to be years from now. Right. Say we get these two superstars. Why can't he be part of the mix that wins a championship? And when these two superstars move
becomes
on,
his team.
When he's 24, 25, he's ready to be everything that the Lakers, that Magic Johnson, because we can't expect Lonzo to do the Magic Johnson. Magic was at a different stage in his life. He was a totally different athlete. The NBA had never seen 6'9", and they also had the captain, the MVP of the NBA, and Kareem on the team. So they're in totally different situations. It's hard to now put the franchise around a guard.
Well, I don't know if it's hard to put around a guard. It's hard to put around him as a guard, right? Because he's not a good shooter. He can't shoot off the dribble the way he shoots the basketball, and he's not a great athlete. Now, he's a good rebounder. He's obviously a very good passer, but unless he learns to finish, it doesn't really, because nobody's going to help. They're going to make him finish in the lane. So there's a lot of work to be done before he can ever be that guy. To answer your question, no, I don't think we've ever seen. This is it's a combination of the Kardashians and Trump. Right, where you say crazy stuff, and everybody says, I'm not going to pay attention to it, I'm not going to pay attention to it, and we can't help ourselves.
It's distracting.
It's like, well, it's like for the media, for us, it's like catnip, right? We're like, I'm not going to go after the catnip, I'm not going to, but then we kind of dig back in. Like, for example, his latest statement was, to a Lithuanian journalist, because no American journalists are currently covering him.
No.
But of course, we buy in, we follow on Twitter, and we start talking about it, was at the end of year 3, if the other two ball boys aren't part of the Lakers, Lonzo's not going to re-sign. Well, I mean, the fact that LeVar doesn't even know they have him under contract for 4 years.
It's not possible.
It's not possible.
He didn't read the fine print.
I understand. Yeah. So those of us who know, I mean, all of us know, we're like, well, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. On the other hand, most people don't know, and they start reacting, and now the Lakers' lack of reaction, they're blowing it off. It'll go away, which is smart. The problem is, at some point, Lonzo, I thought Lonzo had a misstep when LeVar called out Luke Walton. Okay? In that you don't say, I can play for anybody. You say, Luke Walton is my coach. Yes. I want to play for Luke Walton.
He's got to clarify that. But I push back a little bit, Doug, in the sense.
That's the pattern, though, that's growing, is that he won't say anything.
I understand, but I also understand that's a very fragile relationship, it looks like to me on the outside looking in, right, between him and his father. And he's 20 years old, but as Cris Carter said earlier this week, just because you're 20 doesn't mean you're necessarily grown. And I think for Lonzo, he's still coming into that leadership that you're talking about, which I totally agree, Doug,
you are
necessary.
Completely correct, by the way, when you said what you're saying.
Yeah.
But
he's got to get there. I agree with you.
He has to get there because you have to own the locker room.
Sure.
Okay, you have to own the locker room.
You can't own your own family institution in that way. It's hard to lead a whole team.
I mean, this is not a normal job. This is not the normal workplace.
Sure.
I mean, in certain workplaces, your parents can say whatever they want to. It's not going to have an effect. Yeah. But what it's going to have an effect is on your teammates and on the front office when they have sat down with you and supposedly came to an understanding of how we're going to approach this. Like, this is $1 billion business. This is not the AAU circuit. Like, this is not the high school where you can manipulate and be able to control things. This is one of the richest sports institutions that we've ever seen.
This is the second winningest all-time NBA franchise.
I mean, I would just say
16 NBA titles. You have Jerry West. You have Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. You got George freaking Mikan played for, Magic Johnson, Kobe Bryant, Shaquille O'Neal. But here's the point that you made, okay? And it's a really, really good one, okay? It's the Los Angeles Lakers. And it's not just that it's noise. Yeah. It's that they've told LeVar several times, just don't talk about the Lakers. You want to talk about the shoes? Yeah. Great. Yeah. Want to talk about the other two? Great. Don't talk about the Lakers. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And he continues to violate the one thing they asked him to do. And when it becomes a problem, that's when Lonzo has to step in and at some point become a man saying, I'm a member of the Los Angeles Lakers. My father doesn't speak for me. And from now on, ask me the questions, don't ask him the questions.
I think. Now, the new look Cavs may have made LeBron James very happy, but it might cost Dan Gilbert a whole lot of cash. If LeBron picks up his $35 million option next season and the team keeps all the new guys, the Cavs' payroll could be over $300 million.
Say that again, how much?
$300 million, Doug. That includes the luxury tax. Right. Chris Carter, do you think that is just too astronomical of a number and that this might be the last season for LeBron in Cleveland?
This is one thing to Dan Gilbert that you have to give him credit for. There's not a lot of credit being dished out to him. That when he decided to go after LeBron James when he was in Miami, he knew that his pockets would be full too, but he knew that he would have to be committed to paying the luxury tax as long as LeBron James is on that team. If LeBron James is on your team, Miami had the same situation. Mickey Erickson, you got to be committed to be able to pay that luxury tax. I think that the younger players and the salary commitment that they have for them, I think it makes it more advantageous for LeBron to be able to stay there in Cleveland. But they got to win. Yeah. Like they have to win. Getting younger does help his position, but in the playoffs, it's about championships for LeBron. And I believe also right now, he does not know, but I know one thing. He don't care about that luxury tax. He don't care about Dan Gilbert and what he's got to pay to put a winner out there.
No, he doesn't. I agree with you on Dan Gilbert. And we also know that really smart men have really smart accountants. And I'm sure that even though you're going to pay essentially $158 million to nobody, to the rest of the league, that's what the luxury tax is, $158 million that doesn't go to any of the players because of the luxury tax, because they're so far over the luxury tax and is a repeat offender. We also know there's some accounting that can be done to where, hey, man, I lost a ton of money last year, and it ends up helping him in taxes. That said, that's still a huge sum of money. And this is an era of fiscal responsibility. Hell, even the Yankees are trying to be, with the exception of Giancarlo Stanton's new contract, fiscally responsible. Look at baseball. They're trying to completely change the salary structure. And the NBA is going to do the same thing in the offseason.
Hasn't Golden State gone on record as saying, their owner and general manager saying that they're not committed to paying over the luxury tax going into the future?
And that's what we're talking about with Klay Thompson, right? That at some point you have to. So, look, these contracts that they acquired, like, man, how could they get George Hill? Because he's owed $19 million next year.
Clarkson.
How could they have Jordan Clarkson? Because he's got like 3 years left on a bad deal that nobody else wants. So this is a fiscally irresponsible deal that tells LeBron, hey, we want you to stay. But here's where it could backfire. When you're that far over the cap, you're completely handcuffed into adding anybody else. Right. So what Cris is saying is right. It has to work, because if it doesn't, LeBron can't say, well, let's go get some more players next year. Like, hey,
these are the players they add.
This is what you got.
Yes.
Yeah.
So this is where it is the ultimate gamble. It is the ultimate, hey, we'll pay the freight later. We'll pay the balloon payment later with the hope that you win. If you win, he probably stays. If you don't, I think the Lakers' argument is, hey, look, we have the young players that you love playing with in Cleveland, that style. It'll re-energize you. The only difference is our salaries are in line. We're not in cap hell. We can still go out and make
our young guys are on their first contract.
Right.
But didn't they almost have to do this? I understand, Doug, what you're saying. It's an incredibly high risk, fiscally irresponsible, but clearly it feels worth it to them in this moment. Because had they not done this, y'all, and gone out and got these kind of fiscally irresponsible contracts, there was no chance, I believe, that LeBron stayed at all.
Well, last time LeBron walked out the door, Forbes magazine, I think the evaluation of the team went down to $150 million the day that he left. So
goodbye.
How much is 2 championships worth?
Yeah, well, here's the problem with that, with using the value of a franchise with LeBron, without LeBron. It's really hard to sell a franchise, right? Dan Gilbert should just sell the franchise. Well, first, what if I don't want to sell the franchise? Right. Secondly, and I know you can borrow on the value of the franchise for all your other businesses, and we understand how accounting works. But the other thing is, like, I'm not going to buy the Cleveland Cavaliers if I don't know that I have LeBron James, because the value of the franchise plummets when you don't have LeBron James. So it looks great on a spreadsheet how much the team is worth with him as opposed to without him. The reality of it is it's really hard to find somebody who will buy it. But look, you asked the question, did did you have to? You did have to do something. That team was dead in the water, and LeBron had no energy and was clearly not putting his best effort forward. That's the only explanation for having the worst plus-minus in the league. But what they did by taking on these contracts, they could have taken on dead money. They could have taken on, Luol Deng's contract or other contracts for guys that aren't going to play where you can what's called buy them out and smooth them, pay them over a couple of years. They chose not to do that. They chose to take live bodies that are going to play, but are going to play under bad contracts. They did that knowingly, thinking this is a gamble, and it's a risk worth taking because once you have LeBron James, you have no chance of winning a championship, but there is a balloon payment coming next year if LeBron James chooses to stay.
Time now for another All-Star break edition of Put a Grade on It. Now, this time we're talking teams. The Cavs, well, they had a real tough January, but things are looking up for them ever since bringing in George Hill, Rodney Hood, Jordan Clarkson, and Larry Nance Jr. CC, put a grade on the Cavs going into All-Star break.
Oh, man, the Cavs? A C?
Really?
I mean, the way they've played.
They won 2 games. You didn't see them? I'm just kidding.
But I'm more concerned about the other 50 that they played. I mean, they had to retool. Just listen to the general manager, Kobe. Oh, man, we were on a slow death walk. A C. They lucky to get a C. The last 2 games got them out the D range, or they're going to have to repeat the class.
Fair enough.
Yes.
I'm going to give them an incomplete.
Okay.
I just am, because it's a different team, right? And so we haven't seen any adversity. So far, the returns are great, but it's just 2 games.
It's not really tested.
And they were going bad. They had a bad 7 weeks. But it wasn't like they were in last place. They were disappointing for what we thought they could be. I'm going to give them an incomplete as of now. And just hold.
Okay, I think that's fair. You're going to be a little less tough on the grades this time?
I don't know. Let's see. What do you got?
All right. Moving on to the reigning champs. The Warriors, they've seemed really frustrated and seemed bored even to the point where coach had to let them do the coaching. But they're still 44-14. Doug, put a grade right now on Golden State going into the break.
I give them a B. I mean, again, that's probably a nicer grade than I should give them. They still are a half game out of the best record in the NBA, but it's the defensive numbers that are slipping. It's just kind of some of the feeling you get around the team, to which there's a reason Steve Kerr handed over the clipboard, because he thought his message wasn't getting through. That's not a great sign. I also think their bench has issues. Sean Livingston, Andre Iguodala especially. He played 28 minutes and didn't score a point. Like, you almost have to try to not score a point in 28 minutes playing for the Golden State Warriors. So I think they got some issues. They still are just a half game out of the best record in the league.
If we talk about their coaching, we give them an A. We talk about their starting 5, you give them an A. But that bench and their how old are they? How old is Sean Livingston? Is Iggy? Can he get it going? Right. The last 3 years, they've had over 100 games, so the overall fatigue, I will give them a strong B.
Okay.
All right? A strong B.
Is there a weak B?
Yeah, because a strong B is that you're leaning closer towards an A. Like if they clean up some of that, they'd be an A. A weak B is mean you're getting in the C range, the same way you got through college.
Well, you can just go
C in your way through college.
C's for degrees.
He's leaning towards the A range. I like that.
Strong.
Next up, the Celtics. Despite losing Gordon Hayward in the first game of the season, Kyrie Irving and company, well, they still have the second best record in the East. Chris Carter, I'm going to have to ask you to put a grade on the Boston Celtics going into break.
I'm going to give it to him. I'm going to give him an A. Okay. And without Gordon Hayward, I mean, the tragic injury the first game of the season, seeing where they are, second best record in the East. If you talk about, man, they're going to be without Gordon and they still have the second best record, yes. 2 players developing, Jaylen Brown, Tatum, both of them still developing. Now, I know we're on the backside. They might have hit a little slump. But I love the way they've developed as offensive player. They bought into the team. They are 2 cornerstones that I can build around. I'm going to give Boston Celtics an A.
A strong A?
An A.
A weak A?
He's still got a bunch of picks, so just an A.
Okay, just a plain A.
They've lost 9 out of the last 15. I would agree with you that by playing Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum so much so early, it'll help them long term, even if it hasn't helped them short term. But they're not playing Celtic caliber defense. Some of the issues you pointed out of Kyrie Irving in terms of not getting others involved and his inability or lack of desire to play defense consistently hasn't shown great leadership. More than anything, because of how you finished, I'm going to give them a C. They stunk down the stretch. Losing 9 of your last 15 games going into the break leaves a bad taste in everybody's mouth. I'm giving them a C at this point in time.
Oh, it's a hard grader's back, I see.
Yeah.
We're going to move now to the Houston Rockets. Now, Chris Paul, he's missed some time on the hardwoods, but guess what? He's back. And Houston actually has the best record in the NBA. Dougie put a grade on the Rockets going into All-Star Week.
Give me an A.
Okay.
One, it's performance, right?
Mm-hmm.
Result-based, which I hate totally being results-based, but the results will tell you they have the best record in the NBA. Secondly, integrating Chris Paul. And it wasn't easy to integrate Chris Paul because he hasn't played every game.
No.
Right? So, look, it's hard enough to get a guy who has been a lead dog and come in to James Harden's team, then compile it with the fact that he missed half the games of the first half of the season.
Sure.
And is he here? Is he not here? All of that stuff. I don't want to say it's seamless. The defensive ratings are up. So far, it's worked. I give him an A. I don't think you can really argue otherwise.
Capella's overall development has got to put them towards the top of the class. Chris Paul being able to play in sync with James Harden. You got to give them good grades for that. But the P.J. Tucker and some toughness, some things, the guys that they have coming off the bench and give them good grit. Like, I'm going to give them an A+. I think this has been amazing. If you would have told us beginning of the season, at the All-Star break, they would have the best record. Harden and Chris Paul and Capella basically undefeated when they've played as triplets. No, A+ for them.
Yeah, I love seeing CP3 back out there personally. That just makes me happy. Finally, the Thunder got Russell Westbrook
Chris Paul
some help.
make the people happy.
But then they've had an up and down year after that.
Why don't you have Chris Paul buy
they're
diamonds?
33-26 and 5th in the Western Conference. Chris Carter put a grade on the Thunder at the All-Star break.
This is a tough one here. Because with the injury to Robinson, it's really a big setback for them, and I believe it will hurt them as far as what they can do. But the question is All-Star break. I will give them a B because we have seen Paul George potentially say, you know something, I like where I am right now. So if he's able to stay, regardless of what they do during the season, but him and Russ playing together, which Kevin Durant leaving was an indictment on Russ. Paul George coming there saying that he likes it. This is more than wins and losses. This is about potentially where the franchise is. I'm going to give him a B.
Okay.
I give him a B for many of the same reasons. I do think that Russ has done a great job of saying, like, hey, I can – if eyes can change and yous can change, we all can change, like Rocky did, right? And trying to find Carmelo Anthony open and trying to give some leadership to Paul George. Now, they've hit a little bit of a rough spot as well. They're a team that, would they go 3-5 kind of here down the stretch, kind of come limping in. And I think the Robertson injury hurts them defensively, might help them offensively. I give them a solid B. They're about where I thought they would be. It's been a little bit smoother transition than I thought it would be. The defensive rating at the start of the year was actually the best in the league. Generally, they're bought in. Generally, it's working out well. They're not as consistent as I'd like them to be, so they're a B.
Moving on now to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Le'Veon Bell, well, he's a free agent again this offseason. But this time, the Steelers might lock him up for the long haul. General Manager Kevin Colbert says he told Bell, quote, "We have a strong desire to keep you with the Pittsburgh Steelers for the remainder of your career." Colbert also didn't rule out using the franchise tag. Now, we know how L. Bell feels about it. Chris Carter, how critical is Le'Veon to the Steelers' offense? Can they do it without him?
Well, I'll put their offense on the back burner.
Okay.
But if the Pittsburgh Steelers, they are one of the few franchises. I believe there's 8 to 10 franchises every year they start in the NFL, and they have true ambition and a plan to get to the Super Bowl, and try to win that. The rest of the teams, they're just there for money, and they're there transitioning until potentially they can get a team to go on a run. But there's 8 to 10 teams, and every year the Pittsburgh Steelers are in that class. Right. So if they're true to form, if their mission statement is to get another trophy, a Lombardi trophy, then L. Bell is a part of that for the next 3 to 5 years. Now, as far as spending the rest of his career, now that might be just looking a little bit too far.
That's a different conversation.
Yes.
Okay.
That sounds really good.
But
right?
where they are right now, the reason why you have to sign him, because he's the most unique running back that we have in the National Football League. Tell me this, it's hard enough to run the football and be an elite at that. But where else do you have a guy that is an elite runner with the football, but also you can move him outside by the numbers, and he's an elite pass catcher? We don't have that combination. If you look at the numbers that he's put up, since he came into the league, drafted in 2013, yes, he is worthy to be the highest paid running back because he's been consistent, he's very, very unique, and if the Steelers and Ben Roethlisberger trying to get another Lombardi trophy, L. Bell is going to be a huge part of that.
Look, there's no arguing that he's an incredible back. I mean, Todd Gurley would be the only guy, he's younger, maybe not as adept in terms of lining him out wide, but as effective inside the numbers, and he's very good catching the football. So I'm not going to argue the effectiveness of Le'Veon Bell. And the numbers, just forget all the other numbers. The only thing that matters in football, right, or any sport, wins and losses. With them, they're 41-19. Without them, they're 15-12. We've seen them play in the playoffs without Le'Veon Bell, and they have very little chance to compete where the Steelers want to compete.
Yes.
Right.
But there's also, they got to find a new middle linebacker, right? And I mean, that defense.
That's real.
That defense collapsed when you lost Ryan Shazier. And there's a price point there.
Yeah.
So they can franchise tag him at somewhere in the $12 million variety.
Sure.
He probably thinks he's worth.
Rejected a $12 million offer.
But it's not really his choice at the end of the day, right? They can franchise him, but it's a one-year guaranteed deal, or they can extend him. If it was me, he's 25, but he's a little bit of an older 25 because of the injuries he sustained. I'm not going to hold the suspensions against him. I'm going to hold the wear and tear and the injuries against him and say, look, I'll give you 2 years guaranteed at top dollar money, and hopefully it doesn't hurt me against the cap.
What is top dollar money?
Well, I mean, I think he wants somewhere.
He wants 15 to 17. Right. Some word on the street is he said that that's what he wants to command.
Right, but they can pay him $12 million, and there's no negotiation, take it or leave it with the franchise tag.
Sure.
So, I mean, real money, it'll probably be in the $13, $14 million variety, but it only, you only do that if you're the Steelers if you help us against the cap, right?
Yes.
It doesn't hit us.
Give him a soft number.
I would just give him 2 years guaranteed and then worry about the rest in the future. And that therein lies where the negotiations sit, right?
The biggest problem with him, and if you don't sign him, he's going to be a problem in the locker room, on social media. Last year.
But was he this year? I mean, look, he was franchise tagged this year. He didn't go to camp, and it took him a little time to get up and going. But they still could have won a Super Bowl if not for the Jesse James.
Well, the number one thing, if they franchise him, he's going to hold out all the camp.
Right.
Yep.
All right. So if he misses all the camp, there's a chance that he could get injured. There's not a lot of players that have missed training camp, Aaron Donald being one of the exceptions, that does not end up getting hurt, getting some type of soft tissue injury in the first 4 games of the season. Because you cannot play football without practicing football. Now, you can not practice a lot of other sports, but the NFL, it just hasn't been something. So I believe it would be a long – and he's also – He's already upset that he hadn't gotten a long-term contract. So if we continue this, if he doesn't get a long-term deal, I believe that the Steelers are going to have to acquiesce to his demands because, man, they're in a window with Ben Roethlisberger, Mike Tomlin, Antonio Brown, that they have to win right now.
Let me ask you this, Doug, since you want to be kind of the dating residential guru on the show this week. Let's equate it to that.
Haven't been on the dating market in 20 years.
No, I know you haven't, but you've been like the guru here at the table, right?
I got you.
Yeah, you don't have to participate to know what the rules are.
That's correct.
Yes,
so let's equate it to that.
Yeah.
You've been dating, they've been dating, the Pittsburgh Steelers and Le'Veon for a while now. He's ready for a real commitment and a big old rock on his finger, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, you're right. They
want him to sign a prenup.
Not only that, I think they want to just give him a shut-up ring. So we're going to give you a ring. We're not going to give you a wedding date, but then expect the same quality of relationship. And guess what happens when you do that to women? Y'all know she might still be your girlfriend, but the quality of the relationship, all the things that made it so great, going to training camp, offering your best energy on the team and inside the locker room, are compromised. So I do think there's a consequence
that's a great.
to that.
What you're saying is there's a lot of power in the "Have you met my fiancé?"
Correct.
Have you met my fiancé?
That makes you feel good,
right.
and that makes you bring a different energy.
You understand what she's saying? You're not really going to stay with Le'Veon Bell forever. Right? You're like, no running, no one stays
So let's not
forever.
play games.
So you just say we'll get married. When are we going to get married? Let's not get ahead of ourselves. Here's the ring. Will you? Yes. I love that idea. But that's kind of what I'm saying, which is short-term overpay, don't commit long-term because of what CeCe's saying. Yeah. They're in a window. Big Ben's got 2 years left. Overpay him if you have to for 2 years, short term, helps you against the cap. But I wouldn't lock into any running back for 3 or more years. And here's a running back who sustained, an MCL tear. Mm-hmm. He has had 2 suspensions because of off the field stuff.
He has more positive test from being suspended for the whole season, or 8 games.
Right. So with all that in mind, you're not going to want, like you said, you're not going to want to set a date and actually say I do. You just want to keep him or her happy with the ring.
Okay, I'm not into the dating scene, but this is what I'm going to tell you. All right, if it was mine, I wouldn't be concerned about getting married. I'd be concerned about the next 5 years, you and I having it. We're going to go real, real hard.
Okay,
all right,
see
now,
what that looks
after
like.
that, we're going to part ways. Now, I hope that you at that time are stable enough in your career and in your life, because eventually this is going to break up. Like, that's real. That's the way with players and organizations. Now, that's the way it's
and everybody can prepare for that because there's full knowledge.
Everyone can prepare for that. But in this time together, I need your absolute best.
Right.
And my absolute best is going to require $15 million a year.
That's real.
But
that makes sense.
The problem, CC, is this, though, right? If this is the Jimmy Graham, I'm not a tight end, I'm a wide receiver. Like, that sounds good, but that's breaking the mold.
Right. The only thing about Jimmy Graham was not elite enough at one position. Like, he was not an elite blocker. And even when you moved him outside, he was good, but he's not better than Gronk. L. Bell's argument now is, man, I'm elite. I'm nasty. Between the tackles, you can put me in any formation. You can throw me out wide. I am a mismatch waiting to happen. So he has a better case than someone like Jimmy Graham, who's trying to get a salary outside of the position that he plays. He's like, I'm a slash. I'm not a running back, and I'm not a wide receiver.
I understand, but the problem with that, one, breaking out of that mold, and you know NFL guys don't, especially the guys with the purse strings, don't like breaking out of that mold. And the second thing is, and this is probably what hurts him the most, is you look around the league and how many running backs, like in Kansas City, can you get in the third round, the fourth round, and Penny? So I might not be able to replace you with one guy, but I can get two. I can get a vet, and then I can get a rookie, and they won't be Le'Veon Bell even together, but they'll cost me pennies on the dollar, and then I can replace Ryan Shazier. I can fix some of the other holes I have within the Pittsburgh Steelers defense, which got mashed by the Jacksonville Jaguars, and they lost in the playoffs.
One thing, too, that we have to just put out there, Ben Roethlisberger, he's won him a couple Super Bowls.
Yep.
All right? He's the only one there that's won them couple Super Bowls, too. So Antonio Brown, he gave him $18 million last year. Sure. Now, if they give L. Bell, they give him to Big Ben going to come back to the cash window, and that's what messes up your structure as a team. So your argument as far as too much money on the offense potentially could hurt L. Bell, but he's worthy of the money.
It's the opposite of what happened in Seattle, right? They spent too much money on a couple of guys, plus everybody in the locker room gets jealous, and it breaks apart one of the great defenses we've ever seen.
Welcome back to First Things First. We're joined now by former NFL head coach Eric Mangini. Coach, thanks for being with us.
Good morning. Good morning.
Coach is trying to get in on his birthday party. One of the staff members is Coach is trying to get in on it. And everything.
I better get that invite.
And he looks like he means business with that.
Seriously.
Make sure he gets the invite.
We got empanadas coming. I'm not sure. You in on a morning empanada?
Don't I look like I'd be in on it?
You look
said I did not.
Okay.
It would not be a
You look like you'd be in on a kale salad,
not
Coach.
be my earliest empanada.
That is too much fun. All right, so Kirk Cousins, he's single and ready to mingle, right? He's being recruited by superstar players via social media.
Ebony is serious about that single thing.
Oh, my gosh. Von Miller. Well, he started the trend.
If you want someone single, call.
Now the Browns, I'll get you during the break, Chris Carter. Now the Browns, all-pro left tackle Joe Thomas, he's getting in on the fun. Cousins tweeted out this. It was a picture with the caption, quote, "Cooper and I are interested in hearing where the best spot is for us. We have no idea yet. Hashtag waiting. Come get him." Thomas then responded, "I hear Cleveland is nice this time of year. That is, if you like to have a statue one day." Coach, where do you think the best fit would be for Kirk Cousins?
I like Cleveland for Kirk Cousins, and here's why. If he wants to be the highest paid quarterback in the NFL, and he truly believes in his heart of heart that he's a franchise quarterback, there's no better place to go than to Cleveland and to change what's happened there. And they're in a situation from a cap space perspective where they can pay him what he's looking for. They can be in that range. They've got some good young receivers. Josh Gordon, if that continues to work out, he's got a really dynamic receiver. And then you've got those two high draft picks that you can dramatically change, impact players on offense if that's what you want to do. Plus, they committed to the offensive line last year. There's a lot of good things that he could do there.
Now, Coach, you're one of the people you're one of our regular guests on the show, but you have been kind of a proponent of the Cleveland job for a quarterback. You always talk about force multiplier. You're saying, listen, if you're that guy, if you're commanding that type of salary, go to Cleveland. There is a lot of things in Cleveland. Now, you have your own personal experience there in Cleveland, but you believe that the right guy can get it turned around there.
100%. To me, being a great head coach, part of that is having a great quarterback. It helps you along the line, and we've seen it time and time again. Bill Belichick was in Cleveland. He had one winning season in 5 years. He goes to New England. He's got a good quarterback. That whole narrative changes. So my suggestion or my feeling on this is, Kirk, if this is who you believe you are, and you want to be compensated like that, you can go and totally change the trajectory of a franchise, which to me is what you'd want as an athlete.
That reminds me of basketball, of all these coaches who want to be the guy to turn around the Knicks, right? How many guys are going to be the guy and have the statue and get them back to where they were in the 60s, and so many people have failed. I get it. You got Hugh Jackson, and if they sign Kirk Cousins, it would allow them to spend those other 2 first-round picks on more young personnel to put around him. All that makes sense. But if it's me, I go west to Arizona. Larry Fitzgerald's coming back. David Johnson didn't play basically last year because of a wrist thing. So you have one of the elite running backs who can run it and can catch it out of the backfield. You're playing indoors. And if there's one thing that's maybe a flaw in keeping Kirk Cousins in the discussion of the elite quarterbacks, arm strength, but arm strength not an issue when you play indoors. If it's me, I go there. Plus, you have a new regime there. And so you know who your head coach is going to be for the next couple of years. If you go to Denver, Vance Joseph nearly got fired this year. If you go to Cleveland, they nearly got blown out this year as well. So if things don't go well in your first year, you're still going to be stable with head coach. I like the Arizona job because of the surrounding pieces and because you're playing indoors. And you're going to get paid.
If Kirk goes there and plays well, that head coach is going to be there for a long time. If Kirk goes anywhere and plays poorly with that type of salary, whoever the head coach is, he's leaving pretty soon.
I appreciate what you're saying, Doug, about the ability to probably win more consistently and faster in Arizona. But I really like where the coach is going with this, because to me, I see Cleveland as akin to like a startup. Right? So it's almost a blank slate of sorts. It's got some good parts for sure, but it totally needs that one key component. And if Kirk Cousins really believes he's that dude, if you think you're that good, if you think that you're that transformational of a quarterback, he has the wide open opportunity to be a real game changer.
Right.
There.
And also you have to go to the economics. Which team can afford him if he wants to be the highest paid quarterback, which I believe might be fairly important to him. He's been franchised at the $22, $23 million the last 2 years. So we know what the asking price is going to be, at least $25 million. Cleveland might be one of the few places that he can get that. But before I go to Cleveland, I need to holler at Joe Thomas. Joe, you told the people you don't know if you're coming back next year. Or how long you going to be protecting me? How am I going to get a statue if you're not playing? Now, you're going to be there another 3 years, Joe? Like, if you can guarantee me that, the probability of me coming to Cleveland are going to be a lot better. Joe Thomas is probably one of the most underrated, great players that we have ever seen play this game. And he spent his whole career playing in Cleveland. To me, I need to get some type of insurance, if I am Kirk Cousins, outside of that money, that Joe Thomas is going to be protecting me and protecting my backside like Kirk Cousins is protecting his little boy right there. And I'm not going to Cleveland without that. I don't care if they say they're going to use the top pick on a left tackle. I need Joe Thomas.
You need some assurance.
So where would you go?
If I'm going to Minnesota.
Shocking.
Is that biased, Chris Carter?
It's not biased because they have cap space. They have a defense. They play indoors. They got 2 better receivers that mentally and physically more stable.
And they got Dalvin Cook coming back off injury.
I mean, so you talk about Arizona. Minnesota is Arizona plus. That ability to be able to play inside. Now, the only thing that I'll disagree with you on your Kirk Cousins, Kirk's anticipation is so good. And when you don't have great arm strength, you got Joe Montana. The reason why he was so good, anticipation. You need to put him in the West Coast offense, and I believe that you won't see that. In Washington, man, Kirk Cousins throws the ball all over the field because of anticipation and his football IQ. He's the first guy in the building, last guy to leave, and I just believe that Minnesota with that defense, because even if you're off, you're in the game. You don't have to go out there and try to win it week after week. And listen, I like Cleveland. I like the potential. But you know what I'm worried about? I'm worried about the beast in Baltimore that's won a couple Super Bowls, and I'm worried about the team that won 6 Super Bowls in Pittsburgh. So you're going against them in your division. So the ability to have success there is a lot harder.
Look, going to Minnesota is a great situation because of that defense. To me, there are a lot of fantastic pieces in Minnesota. You got continuity with the coaching staff in terms of the head coach, and there's discipline, and they've been able to win through adversity. To me, that shows great things from an organizational perspective. I agree with all the things you're saying. I just would like to see him try to be that transformational player. You know, you add Jimmy Garoppolo to San Francisco, and suddenly they win a bunch of games. It's amazing.
That's a startup.
Okay, so
startup
insert a quarterback.
Yeah, but I don't think Cleveland is a startup. Cleveland is one of the kind of classic franchises that used to be and that is constantly.
You calling them Kmart?
Well, Kmart, the JCPenney's, the Sears is, where the rest of the world has kind of evolved, and they need a new CEO to come in and advance it to the 21st century. Yeah. Here's my question. I understand that what he wants to show and how he's going to be paid. How good is he actually?
Well, that's the answer, or that's the question. Yeah. If he is as good as he feels that he is.
No, that wasn't my question, though. And you think he threw 4,900 yards 2 years ago, right? Over 4,000 last year.
When we were talking about A.J. McCarron, we broke the quarterbacks down into 3 different categories. We had A.J. McCarron. If he was a starter, he would be in the bottom half. Yeah. Kirk Cousins would be smack right there in the middle. Right. And some days, Kirk Cousins is elite. But when he drifts back down, he's in the middle of the NFL and going to have you in plenty enough good position to win a lot of games because you don't have to babysit and try to hide the quarterback.
And when I looked at Kirk Cousins for a while when he first started, I thought, can he win in the fourth quarter? Yeah. Can he bring a team back? And I didn't know whether he could, and I got the sense that was a problem. But then when you actually go look at his body of work and you spend time reviewing, he's got a bunch of fourth quarter comebacks. He's got a bunch of successful 2-minute drives. To me, he's shown that he's been able to perform in the clutch based off of what he's done so far.
Why did Washington never buy into him? Like that's always remember when Matt Flynn was with the Green Bay Packers, right? Mm-hmm. And Matt Flynn became a free agent, and Joe Philbin goes down to Miami. And Joe Philbin did not bring Matt Flynn, his backup, to be his starter in Miami. To me, that was all the alarms I needed. Because if you work with a guy every day, you know if he's got it. And if you're not going to bring him, you say, why did Jay Gruden not lay down, stand up on one of these tables and say, we need to sign these guys? Why did it not work out in Washington?
They gave him $45 million in the last 2 years.
I understand, but there's some sort of disconnect between the franchise and Kirk Cousins, to which there was never truly buy-in to Kirk Cousins being good enough to be their quarterback. Right? They went and got Alex Smith, who's just above average, gets you to the playoffs, and we know who Alex Smith is.
Alex Smith is not a better quarterback than Kirk Cousins, and they got Alex Smith at a number that is suitable to them going forward. Okay, so they were not comfortable giving Kirk Cousins $100 million.
But why did San Diego move on from Drew Brees? Why did Tampa Bay move on from Steve Young? Sometimes people make mistakes. Sometimes you think that you're going to get better. And look, it happens throughout the world. It happens in the working environment. It happens with relationships. Sometimes you think it's going to
dating.
It's going to be a little bit better, and then you realize, oh my God, I had the one.
Going now to the NFL draft. Mike Mayock has his quarterback rankings out. He's got Sam Darnold on top, followed then by Josh Allen, then Josh Rosen, and Baker Mayfield. Chris Carter, who do you think out of those will end up being the best QB in professional football?
This is hard. These guys are experts. I love college football. I do follow it, but without the teams where they're going, it's impossible for me to say which guy, not knowing where they're going to be. Because let me tell you something.
It's about fit, right?
What system?
It's about fit. It's also about weather. All right, we talked about in the break about hand size. As you go through the combine, watch the quarterback's hand size. Watch who has to go play in Cleveland. Watch if the Giants do decide to draft a quarterback, because you have to be a different human being dealing with the elements. And whose ball flight is more suited for that? Because Josh Rosen, I don't believe he can play in those type of conditions. I believe Sam Darnold is ultimately a star. But Baker Mayfield is a player that I want to watch. If you look at a guy who started in college as a walk-on. No one's ever won the Heisman Trophy who started as a walk-on. A top 5 finisher in the Heisman Trophy. 3 years, not one fabulous year. So for me, he's a little undersized. He's got a little, what they call little piss and vinegar in him. He's got a little stuff to him. Yep. To me, a little swag. I believe as a leader and being focused, he can be the franchise face going forward, but I believe he can make all the throws. I believe he's one of those guys who runs in one of those offenses where he will be successful. He will transfer that success from Oklahoma into the pro game, which we haven't seen a lot of people come from that style of offense have success. So Baker Mayfield is kind of my favorite. Sam Darnold, though, is a dude, and I do believe he will be the face of a franchise.
Okay, I mean, like obviously I bow to CeCe in terms of his knowledge because he's caught passes from some of the best, and he knows this game inside and out. We'll start with Mayfield. The question is, which one of these guys is he? You got the Russell Wilson because he's undersized and arm strength and mobility, right? Or is he Johnny Manziel? And not just Manziel off the field, as he's had one off-the-field issue. There's obviously some ego stuff with could rub some people the wrong way. Everybody I know at OU says they love him, right? And I think the fact that he never lost a road game as quarterback at Oklahoma.
And the teams he beat on the road.
Right. Goes in and beats your boys in the shoe.
Yeah,
beats Oklahoma State on the road. I think he's kind of closer to Case Keenum, though. Another air raid guy, but a guy who you can hide.
Spread offense.
A spread offense, and he can make some plays. I don't think Josh Rosen is accurate. I mean, Josh Allen is accurate enough. I think it's Rosen and Darnold, and the two could not be more dissimilar. Rosen is cookie cutter for the perfect 2018 quarterback, right? Like, he looks good back there. He looks accurate. His release doesn't have to be changed, but people don't like him. Okay? And not only is life a popularity contest, but if you're going to be the leader of a franchise, you have to walk into that huddle, and maybe they don't have to like you, but they have to want to play hard for you. They won't have to want to lay down on train tracks for you. And that's what Sam Darnold has. Darnold's team, if you watch them play UCLA, Rosen looked better at times, but Darnold just finds a way to win. And if I'm Cleveland, a franchise that have been mired in losing season after losing season after losing season, look, there's some things he has to clean up in terms of turnovers and reading a defense. And he played more of a high school offense than even a college offense at USC. But you pointed out, he's a dude. Right?
Yes.
He makes plays in the pocket. He can move the pocket. He can extend plays. He's got a great arm strength. Yes, his release is a little long, but it's not slow. And I prefer the neck-up evaluation that Sam Darnold can get along with people and can blend into the alpha room of not just the quarterback room, but an NFL locker room, more so than Josh Rosen, who checks almost every box with the exception of personality boxes. And I think that's a bigger part in what makes you successful.
And the player that we talked about the least in Josh Allen, he probably has the biggest upside. Now, he's a modern-day cowboy. I mean, he's big, 6'5". He's like Ben Roethlisberger, or if he takes over, he has the skill set of a Joe Flacco, a little more athletic, but he can really throw the deep ball. Accuracy is a thing. Do people get more accurate once they get into the pro game? Only a few of them. So his inaccuracy, are people going to be able to coach him up? Now, one thing at the Senior Bowl, he was really inaccurate at the beginning of the week. But as the week progressed, he got a lot better, ended up being, as scouts would say, probably one of the most improved players there. So a lot of talent at the 4 quarterback positions. I believe that we see all 4 of them legitimate starters in the National Football League.
Who do you think of these 4 guys, and I don't want to wish anything bad on any of these young men, might end up most likely to be a bust?
I hate to do it, but I would just say Sam Rosen. Because for one, when you get to the National Football League, he's a Josh Rosen. He's a little undersized. He comes from a family of fairly have influence.
Privilege.
I just say when you come from people who have money, getting hit for a living is typically not one of the first things that you sign up to do.
He's a tennis player too. I mean, so and he's had shoulder issues.
And that tennis ball, the net and everything don't hit back. So for me, when you get into the grind of the National Football League, those things become important. Also, I looked up Rosen and Sam Darnold, their hometown. Their hometown ends with a beach. Both of them from California. So both of them end with the beach. Now, if you're going to send that beach person to Cleveland, buyer beware.
Oh, okay, there's a difference, though, okay? So the beaches are, one's Manhattan Beach. That's where Cowherd lives, right? That's where Josh Rosen's from. Okay? That's a place where people move to. San Clemente, which is a beach town, which is where Sam Darnold's from. That's where people are from. It's much more blue collar.
Working class.
It's working class.
Energy.
It's right next to an old retired nuclear power plant, right? It is not the garden. It's not Fresno or Bakersfield, but it's not the garden spot of
it's not the shiny jewel of
no,
SoCal.
it's not Newport. It's not Manhattan.
You'll like this though. Right. Josh Allen, though, he comes from 3 generations of farmers. He come from a farm.
I like some grit. I like some grit too.
I like the story of Josh Allen
and diamonds. She likes grit and diamonds.
When I see a guy who looks the part, right? But I watch him, he's not accurate. Like and you can tell me all you want about new offensive line and new wide receivers, but he had those problems with previous teams with Wyoming. So he's played in cold weather. He does look the part. If you ask me who's the likely biggest bust, I would probably say it's Josh Allen, because there are some that are putting him atop the draft board, and I have a lot more faith in Rosen and even Darnold. Rosen, the thing that gives me fear is the tennis player mentality and the shoulder problems. The reason he doesn't play tennis is because of a shoulder problem. The reason he sat part of last year was because of a shoulder problem. You can't do any of these things that Rosen can do with the football if you can't throw it with a bad shoulder.
Hey, everybody, Nick Wright here, and thank you so much for listening to the First Things First podcast. But I wanted to tell you about another podcast at Fox Sports that we are so excited about, and that is Alexi Lalas's State of the Union podcast. That's right, U.S. soccer legend Alexi Lalas will be partnering up with Fox soccer guru and researcher extraordinaire David Moss to review the top storylines in soccer across the globe. Each week, Alexi will give his State of the Union on American soccer as it rebuilds for the future. Subscribe and listen for free on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts right now. Now back to the show.
Coach Mangini's still with us here on First Things First. We're talking the Raiders. John Gruden, he's trying to turn the franchise around. He says he envisions bringing back Marshawn Lynch and Michael Crabtree next season. So, Coach, when he goes back here, what do you think will be the biggest challenge for really turning around this franchise?
Well, he's got a lot of challenges. As hard as he's worked in TV over the last 8 years, you have control over your schedule to some degree. And when you go back into the NFL, you no longer have that control over your schedule. There's 63 players, there's 20 coaches, there's everybody else who needs to talk to you, who needs your time. There's that commitment. It's like going from running on your treadmill to doing a triathlon. Getting used to the changes, the rule changes. You heard him talk about that a little bit. In the offseason, it's very different than when he was there last.
Yes.
Very different. And in season, how much contact you can have, not just personal contact in the offseason where you're getting to know guys, you're implementing your system. You can't do that like you used to. And then during the season, being able to hit, to have pads on, that's almost a thing of the past. And the last thing is expectations. When he was calling games, you could always be right. Yeah. And everybody there was trying to make you look good. Now, to whom much is given, much is expected. And when you make $100 million, you've got a lot of responsibilities.
It's interesting because I don't feel like this is Joe Gibbs part two. Remember when Joe Gibbs went away to racing and then he came back to the Washington Redskins? I remember a friend of mine was in the room when they installed the offense the second time around, and they still had, it was the old offense, and they had wide receivers in a three-point stance. And they're like, this, it almost got laughed out of the room. They're like, this won't work. I don't think there's that type of learning curve, but there will be a learning curve. The great thing is, he's got a big-time quarterback. The great thing is, he has a good offensive line that seemed to be in a system that didn't fit the personnel. The great thing is, he has talented wide receivers. They need to catch. They had too many drops. They had a system to which they weren't bought into. I think there's some massive defensive. They have a couple of big-time players on defense, but the defense wasn't even good in the playoff year. But if you can start with, you have your franchise quarterback, you have an offensive line that can protect that quarterback, and you have some weapons to get the football to, I think he's a little bit further ahead of the curve than most that take over a floundering franchise. Is that fair?
It's totally fair. Whenever you take a job, if you've got a quarterback that you can win with, you're ahead of the curve. It doesn't matter whether you're going back after 8 years or it's your first head coaching job. And to me, I'm sure that's what also made this a really attractive opportunity.
Yeah, one thing about who is John Gruden? John Gruden is a gym rat. All right, he's a backup quarterback from the University of Dayton. He did all the grunt work as a coach. Ended up reaching the height of his profession by going to Tampa Bay, winning that Super Bowl, went on to have a very successful broadcasting career. I spent a lot of time at the other network with Coach Gruden. But this is different. This league is different. The players that he's addressing on a regular basis are totally different than the players when he coached. This generation of players is different. Now, you mentioned the rules. Yeah, the rules are totally different, but they're different, too, for a reason. This is what the players asked for. So when Gruden, he's used to being a grinder. Gruden is about staying after practice. Let's run 10 more routes after practice. Let's run some of those digs. Let's run some of those takeoffs. This new collective bargaining, you can't do that. Why? Because the players. That's what the players voted for. So in his being brought up to speed on this new NFL, there is a learning curve as far as the amount of time. And John is a teacher of the game. And when they tell you, based on rule, that you can spend less time with the students, being a coach in the NFL now is totally different. And how you got to get your job done is totally different. He does have good personnel. That does help. I love him coaching the Raiders. But there is some adjustments, even for a very, very talented coach that John Gruden is.
Well, there's two different parts. The first thing is, you're right, there is, he has to know that the players are different now than they were previously. The difference, though, is that those players have grown up watching him with his Gruden's quarterback camp, right? Like, that's the crazy thing. The power of television is there isn't a soul who plays football who doesn't know who John Gruden is. And, oh, yeah, by the way, I thought he did a great job when he was doing Monday Night Football, bringing up some of those old practice tapes back when he was with Favre, right? So now you start to kind of connect the dots. Oh, yeah, he's more than just Tampa. He's more than just Oakland. Like, here, he was with the Green Bay Packers, with all these other kind of the wellspring of coaches. But, I mentioned Joe Gibbs, or what was the coach? I'm blanking on his name. Of course, led the Rams to win a Super Bowl.
Vermeil.
Dick Vermeil, right? Yeah. Those are the two guys that took the longest respites, right? Took time away. And though Joe Gibbs didn't come back and win a Super Bowl, they did get to the playoffs. And Dick Vermeil came back and won a Super Bowl. So there is precedent for doing it. And the difference is he has not been out of the public sight. And so in the relationships with players, much like NFL players know you because most of them grew up either watching you play or watching you as a broadcaster, the same is true for John Gruden. He doesn't even have to introduce himself. They already know who he is, what he's about, and what his mannerisms are.
Yeah, but I don't think they know who John Gruden is, though. Who he sees on TV, it's like Bill Parcells. I work with Coach Parcells. Yeah. Who he is as a football coach and who he is on TV, even as a great player, man, it's night and day.
No, I understand, but there's some equity there.
Yes,
right?
there's some
familiarity. Yes.
There is, but there'll be things that he'll reference that the kids will have no idea about. I remember talking about Tom Landry in one of my meetings when I was in San Francisco, and there's a player from Texas, and he's like, who's Tom Landry?
Of course, the disconnect there. Did you lose your mic? There's a disconnect there sometime between the generations as far as the pitchers and how you've learned about the game is totally different than how they've seen the game. I think one of the biggest adjustments is the coaches being critical of him and reporters. Just imagine John Gruden, a beat writer, being critical of his offensive play call late in the game, or him mismanaging the clock like we do or the catch, no catch. Coach, what did you think? Or you challenged it. You shouldn't have challenged it. The replay clearly showed. So these type of things as a broadcaster, they're not critical for you. Now being in the limelight and being the guy for the Raiders, like these things are real. And I do believe Coach will adjust to them, but they are real.
I can tell you this stuff when you cover the sport. Now, obviously, I didn't coach the sport before covering the sport. But in trying to prepare myself to try and coach in college basketball, my thought is always hey, instead of studying under one guy and one football family, he's been able to have the football family with the Packers, then be the head coach, and now over the last 8 years, go into everybody's practice and learn some new things from different people and bring in some of the fundamentals that everybody else uses to your own practice.
I just can't help but wonder, though, if that familiarity that many of these players will have for Coach as a broadcaster and the kind of prism in which they've been introduced to Gruden will have an adverse effect in the sense of maybe they think they know him in a way that they don't, as Cris was pointing out, and maybe there's not reluctancy, but some hesitation to fully embrace him as a coach and not have preconceived notions about who he is and what his style is and what his expectations are.
Well, first things first. When John Gruden walks in the door, you know he's in control. You know he's in charge.
Sure.
There is no doubt of what he's doing and who's the guy doing that. Now, the relationship that he's going to have with the players, Coach Gruden would like to think that he's a player's coach. But Coach Gruden has struggled in some relationships of how he talked to guys and how he responded and his style of coaching. I know players that have played for him, and there have been issues with how he communicated his style of coaching to them.
And the other thing that you look at, people do feel they know him because they have seen him, and there will be some benefit of the doubt because of what he's done on TV. But the problem with that is he comes in with such high expectations. The contract, the amount of power that he has, the fact that he does have star power. So if, like any new coaching staff, you go through some bumps, you go through some rough times, people are going to look at that and be taken aback by it. It's going to be a problem as opposed to an asset a lot of times.
Yeah, I do think, though, that here's the benefit he runs. He's in Oakland, and they're not even in Oakland. They're in Oakland for like 2 more years. That is not exactly the media epicenter of the world. It's just not. Additionally, yes, they made the playoffs 2 years ago, but it had been 15 years since they've been relevant. So the idea of expectations,
I believe that helps.
I think they're raised by the contract, but that's really about it. When you look in totality,
it's still the Raiders.
The Raiders haven't been good since the last time he was in charge of the Raiders.
I think the most important thing is the NFL was better. They have a quality NFL coach getting back into the coaching business. So we, as football fans and the National Football League, as viewers, consumers of that product, we win having him back on the field.
I'm Jenna Wolfe, and thank you for listening to the First Things First podcast. Make sure to subscribe and tell your friends, family, and coworkers about the podcast, which, by the way, is available on iTunes and all your favorite podcast apps. You can catch a fresh new episode every Monday through Friday on FS1, starting at 6:30 a.m. Eastern, 3:30 a.m. Pacific. So long, everyone.